A family faces an unthinkable tragedy.
He had done what we feared he would do.
Two siblings murdered by their own brother.
And my very last sentence was, "Mommy loves you."
See how this couple is healing one day at a time. 700 Club Interactive starts now. Well, welcome to the show. It's a miracle that's going viral. A man in Lodi, California, who was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor, says it disappeared without any medical treatment.
Paul Wood says several months ago he began suffering with massive headaches. Wood's doctor sent him to a neurosurgeon at UC San Francisco, and after running several tests, the doctor told him he had a brain tumor. Here's how Paul responded.
He says to me, "You have a big lump in the back of your head. Yeah, it's a brain tumor." And he goes, it's very serious. And I told him, I said, "Don't worry about it, Richard." I said, "This is just a test of my faith, and that's all it is." And he said, "No, you don't understand." He goes, "This is very serious." I said, "I'm very serious about my faith."
Well, Paul asked his friends, family, and his church to pray, and then the unexplainable happened. The day before he was scheduled to have surgeries, doctors canceled Wood's operation. The tumor was gone. It had completely disappeared. And here's what his doctor had to say.
We do tests, we have medical technology, and we try to come out with some conclusion. We're like detectives. And sometimes things happen that we can't explain.
Yeah, things do happen that we can't explain. And there's an old adage that if you can't explain it, then that means it's not God. When God's involved, the unexplainable, the impossible starts to happen, and you can't wrap your head around it. It's resistant to analysis, it's resistant to scientific inquiry, but it's wonderful. That's why we call them miracles.
Exactly. Well, God doesn't just heal, he also protects. A pastor in Brazil is alive and well today after a man tried to shoot him during church. Now, we want to warn you that the video you're about to see is graphic.
A gunman opened fire on Pastor Odilio da Silva at the Temple of Angels Church as the pastor sat behind a pulpit with Jesus written on it. The attacker, 30-year-old Wesley Souza, can be seen calmly walking up to the platform before unloading his weapon on the pastor. The pastor dove for cover behind the pulpit, taking 2 bullets before the shooter was tackled by a church member.
Miraculously, only the pastor was injured. After undergoing emergency surgery, he is reported to be in serious condition but out of danger. Souza, who has a history of drug trafficking, is in custody and has been charged with attempted murder.
That's
Obviously,
one of those unexplainable ones where, why in the world would you, I mean, that's,
yeah.
Anyway.
When you're in that whole drug world, a lot of things don't make sense.
Your decision is hampered.
To say the least.
You're under a disability. Do you ever wonder if anyone still reads their Bible? Well, it turns out the answer is yes.
Barna finished its annual State of the Bible survey and found half of Americans are Bible users. In other words, they engage with the Bible on their own, while some admit they only read the Bible 3 to 4 times a year. 14% of those surveyed said they read the Bible every day.
2/3 of Americans express curiosity to know more about what the Bible says. And that's not all. 58%, that's almost 6 in 10 adults, believe the message of the Bible has transformed their lives.
While the printed word is still the most popular, the use of technology to read the Bible has also grown steadily. You can see here that almost 60% read the Bible on the internet and over 40% use a Bible app. So, Gordon, what do you do?
Oh, I'm going old school. I scroll down on my phone.
Wow, I'm not going to tell you what I do.
Someone just gave me another print version, and it's like I do use print versions for reference. Mm-hmm. So when I'm studying for messages and I want to go in depth in the Greek or Hebrew, I break out the old leather-covered print versions, which are these massive things. But for just every day, I find it very convenient.
Yes.
You got the Bible on your phone? Okay.
Well, I think it is. I have it on mine too from a devotional standpoint. But when I'm really wanting to read, or sometimes if I'm wanting to look up something that I need, the old school Bible, but I write in mine. You don't write in yours.
No.
So I kind of know like what to look for when I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like
It's like
that.
going back to an old friend.
I just kind of like the feel of the pages, yes.
I like the feel of the pages. You know, you got to break out the reading glasses, though.
Well, I got to do that either way.
When I'm on the phone, though, I can set the font to be useful for my old
4
eyes.
inches.
Yeah, you know, each letter takes up the entire screen. Well, the Navy SEALs are one of the most elite fighting forces in our armed services. Only a small percentage of Navy recruits make it to SEAL training, and only a fraction of those who make it to training are able to finish it.
Well, what you might not know about this Special Operations Force is the unique way that SEALs are honored after they pass. Take a look.
On an early morning in November, a solemn memorial was held to honor 53 Navy SEAL team members who have passed in the last 12 months. It's the annual Swim Out of Ashes that takes place in Fort Pierce, Florida. Volunteer SEALs jump from helicopters and swim to shore to collect the ashes of the deceased from family members. After each name is read, the Hell Week bell is used to ring out each SEAL team member one last time. The ashes are then swum out and scattered 500 yards off the beach, a final resting place for those who courageously served our country.
Well, this story is extra special to us because CBN's own Gigi Conklin, Pat Robertson's personal assistant, was there. Her late husband, Chuck Conklin, was one of the SEALs honored in that special ceremony.
The Navy gave each family a shadow box filled with memorabilia from their SEAL's career. And we want to show you Chuck's shadow box. Chuck served in the early 1960s and was in Class 32. Gigi told us that out of the 118 men who tried out in his SEAL class, Chuck was only 1 out of 17 to make the cut. And that is certainly incredible. And there's a picture that'll take you back in history. What a great way to honor our men who have really gone the extra mile and then some to make it all the way through that training. And then you put your lives on the line. Chuck was an expert in underwater demolition, and that is hair-raising, to say the least. He had a lot of guts.
A lot of guts, and he was also lots of fun.
He was a lot of fun.
Well, in Japan, Christianity is a minority faith, and the church is very small. But CBN Superbook is now in its 2nd month on air in Japan, and it's gaining popularity.
Recently, the program took center stage at a large evangelistic event for children and their families. Lucille Toulousan brings us this report from Tokyo.
This is known as the Joy Joy Festival. It's Japan's largest annual evangelistic event, organized by 88 churches and the Word of Life Press Ministries, which is Superbook's ministry partner here. 2,000 kids and their families attended, and half of them are not part of any church. Churchgoers grabbed this opportunity to invite non-Christians to the concert, not only for entertainment, but to hear the good news about God's love. A special attraction this year was Superbook's Gizmo, or Robic, as he is known in Japan. The audience got even more excited when they received Superbook DVD sets.
Gizmo is very happy meeting new friends here at the Joy Joy Festival, where Superbook has also participated. This is a great way to promote Superbook that now airs on national television here in Japan.
John Tan, CBN Regional Director for Japan, describes the airing of Superbook as a miracle and a great favor from God.
There was a difficulty to get religious or Christian material on air.
But seeing Superbook, the quality of animation, and it helps children, so then they've allowed us to be on air.
In addition to watching Superbook on television, churches are using the animated Bible series as part of their Sunday school curriculum.
One of the big issues for the youth is they don't have hope. They don't know what to do with the future. But we know the church has the real hope in Christ.
The lesson I learned from Superbook is to put Jesus first in everything I do.
I love the part of the resurrection after Jesus died on the cross, because Jesus is the one who forgave our sins and died on the cross. I invite my friends to our home to watch Superbook. I hope they tell their mothers about Superbook so they can get to know Jesus.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Tokyo.
Well, that's a very special story. Superbook started in Japan back in the early 1980s and was broadcast nationwide. We're now broadcasting in Tokyo and Osaka, and there's a whole broadcast map. You can see all the different languages that we have, but it's great to see Superbook back in Japan, the country where it all began so long ago. Is now back, and it's rating again. Back in the 1980s, it hit #2. We're waiting for those kind of ratings. We don't have them so far. It just started broadcasting, but we're looking at season 2 coming up next year, and that's a wonderful thing.
Boy, put that on your prayer list. That would be something great to see. Well, still ahead, an unthinkable tragedy. There are parents who have had to see their oldest son kill their 2 younger siblings. The tragedy has been horrible, and they're dealing with it as best they can.
And there has been days when I walk away from here, though, with just a little bit better hope. My hope has more confidence.
See how this family is holding it together one day at a time.
A little over 1 year ago, a Colorado couple faced an unimaginable tragedy. Their 2 youngest children were stabbed to death by their oldest son. In this CBN News exclusive, the mother and father share their story of love, loss, and finding their way to forgiveness. Ephraim Graham has the story.
With daily visits to the cemetery,
Even at 254, day 254,
Melissa and Vincent Murphy count the days since their children were murdered. 5-year-old Sophia Grace and 7-year-old Noah Kent, the youngest of their 5.
it was just like, this is my first day without my Noah and my Sophia.
And at 19, their oldest son, Malik, is charged with stabbing his brother and sister to death and stabbing his father.
Now, Molly, this one, well, it has the whole community upset.
The crime stunned the Colorado Springs community.
That deadly attack happened at about 1 o'clock this morning.
Take me back to October 17th. What's the day like?
That is a kind of a painful part about all of this, is that it was a very normal, enjoyable day. You know, we kind of did the same routine that we always do, and you know, had dinner, and it was a nice night, and so we were all outside as a family.
And even Malik, because not all the time Malik comes outside to play with them in the evenings with the little kids, and he did that night. He was out there playing with Vinny and Elijah and Noah and everybody, and they were all playing football, and yeah, everything was, and then we came inside and did the whole bedtime routine, and my very last sentence was, "Mommy loves you."
Shortly after 1 a.m., I awoke to the sound of Sophia's voice saying, "No, Malik, no." And got up. As soon as I reached the threshold of the doorway, Malik turned, met me face to face, and then his hand went up when he had a knife and down in my neck. I instantly reacted and just pushed him through the door, the garage door there, and into the garage, and yelled, yelled for help. I mean, some of the yells were for help, and some of it was the realization that he had done what we feared he would do.
For years, Vincent and Melissa stood by their son in his battles with mental illness. He'd been in and out of treatment centers for thoughts of violence, but he'd never acted on them, and therapists cleared him to be back at home.
At what point do you realize that your 2 youngest children are dead?
I remember hearing my mom when I was in that garage, and between these guys, I heard my mom yell, "Sophia's been stabbed." I ran inside, I left, and I didn't know they were upstairs, so I ran down to them to find her. And I found Noah first. I knew he was gone.
Home for Malik right now is here at the El Paso County Correctional Center. Mom has been here to see him at least a half dozen times. Dad has been here as well, but both will never forget that very first time following the stabbing deaths of Noah and Sophia.
Well, it was hard for me. Definitely hard for me. By this time, there's a lot pent up and built up.
Malik told me that he has things he wants to say to me and his dad. He has a lot he wants to say. He said he actually sat down with his attorney and told his attorney everything that he wanted to say to us, and they told him not to say those things. So I remember my advice back to Malik was, well, you know, Malik, your attorneys are going to give you good courtroom advice, and then there's also your moral advice, and that's going to be different than from what they give you. I said, because you do owe your dad and I an apology and an explanation.
What's your prayer and hope for him right now, as mom and dad? What do you want to see happen with him?
Well, my hope and prayer, honestly, for him is salvation. It's for salvation. I believe in eternity. Heaven is real. God is real. And so that's what I pray for now is for his salvation.
There are a lot of things that we want in the flesh. We want answers, and we want to feel, we want closure, and we want...
You may not get those.
But we may not get those.
As his parents, have you reached a point of saying, I forgive you, son?
Well, that is definitely the battle. And that's a long-term battle. That's something we're working through.
I think it kind of reflects our personal relationship with God, where we are individually with our personal relationship with Christ, is how we're walking out the road of forgiveness.
Melissa and Vincent walk the forgiveness road together with every trip to the cemetery and every prayer she records in her journal.
We don't have to spend our time hating Malik, because God is going to vindicate us, and his love will endure forever. I've allowed the truth to comfort me and give me hope.
In writing, Melissa knows Malik's battle and their family's fight is a spiritual one.
And there has been days when I walk away from here, though, with just a little bit better hope. My hope has more confidence, a little bit more hope in the reality of where Noah and Sophia are and how real heaven really is.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Well, here's an update on the story. Last month, Malik Murphy entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, and the Murphys released this statement. We are still heartbroken, but we are steadfast in refusing to run away from God and give in to fear and hopelessness. In today's world, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of fear and hopelessness. That's the whole point of terrorism. But in American culture today, we're seeing things that I never thought I'd ever see. I never thought I'd see school shootings where little children are shot to death. And here we have something that's happened in a family home, and a family member. Had he been through treatment? Yes. Did it work? Obviously not. And where do you go with this? And you in these times, you just don't want to hear, well, all things work together for good, because you're going, well, it didn't work together for good for me. It didn't work together for good for my family. That wonderful mother, here she is saying, I believe in God. I believe in heaven. As I look at the graves of my children, I know where they are now. And she's holding on to that. But where do you go with that grief? And how do you deal with that? There aren't simple words for that. There are just times where you come and hope you have friends, hope you have loved ones that are just willing to sit with you and not try to give you counsel or not try to recite Bible verses to you, but just be there and to hold your hand and cry with you through the process. Jesus said that in this world, we are going to have trouble. And sometimes when that trouble comes to us, we just don't want to receive it. We don't want to go through it. We certainly don't want to live it. But he says, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And when we have our hope in him, and we have our hope in heaven, we know at one point in time there will come a day when every tear will be wiped away. If you're going through grief, realize this: God knows what it's like to lose a child. He's been through that. And you can go to the God of all comfort. And if you need prayer, if you need somebody just to be with you, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call us. 1-800-700-7000. When you call, there's something we have for you. It's called Living Through Grief. Absolutely free pamphlet. All you have to do is call us. We'd be glad to email it to you so you can have it right away. If you don't have a computer or any kind of internet account, we can mail it to you. But get it. Realize that there is a way through. You can live with it, and you can have that hope that passes all understanding. Call us, 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Well, still ahead, we celebrate a charity that's been saluted by presidents and people around the world. Operation Blessing marks its 40th anniversary.
It wasn't like we had this huge store of resources that we drew from. It was like God led us step by step.
See the origins of one of the most trusted charities in the world when we come back. To date, Operation Blessing has provided food, safe water, health care, and disaster relief to millions of people in over 90 countries around the world, as well as right here at home. It's one of the most trusted charities in the nation, and it started 40 years ago because of the vision of one man.
In the summer of 1994, 35 years after Pat had graduated from New York Seminary, he returned to Manhattan with Operation Blessing and kicked off a coast-to-coast thrust to feed America's hungry.
We need you praying because we need people to help in this effort all over the nation. And among other things, we need churches, because what I want people to do, I want the church to be the leader in the community.
The compassion was real. This was not simply tricking people into being interested in hearing the gospel by giving them things. It was a care and a love for people. And of course, that's a masterful testimony to the way Jesus is, the heart of God is.
Pat started Operation Blessing in 1978 after reading the scriptures in Isaiah about caring for the poor. Those early outreaches included meals for the hungry, blankets for the homeless, and groceries to feed families in crisis. By 1983, Operation Blessing was a nationally recognized charity.
That's what's happening with CBN and the 700 Club's Operation Blessing. They've given nearly $2.5 million to more than 8,500 churches, and this money is then matched by the local churches. And the result has been fantastic.
We worked on God's faithfulness. So it wasn't like we had this huge store of resources that we drew from. It was like God led us step by step.
The need for staple foods like brown rice led to distribution projects in suffering and remote areas.
We are terribly impressed by this project of yours. And I think that a lot of people assume, that there are no more hungry people in this country, and that's just not so.
Terry Mewson, co-host of the 700 Club, first shared in Operation Blessing's hunger relief convoys more than 2 decades ago.
And I mean, to this day, tons of food every month go out across this country to hungry families. When there's disaster relief needed, I mean, OB is first on the spot and last to leave. And he is the one who was the catalyst for all of that, the one saying, get the job done.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Oh, bless your heart. You know, it's my privilege and joy.
I can tell you, when you look at that line and see those people taking away that food, they know they're blessed.
Sure.
They know they have been touched by the hand of God.
I've been on medical missions trips and seen cleft palates repaired and hearts repaired. And, we've done all kinds of eye surgeries for people who'd lost their vision. So that was quite amazing.
And that's been fairly low profile in his ministry in many people's minds, but globally it has been powerfully impacting.
Would you like me to pray for you?
Quisiera que yo ore por usted, Padre.
In Jesus' name.
En el nombre de
What happened to all
Operation Blessing International's president, Gordon Robertson, sees an even wider outreach to those in need.
Now one of the most trusted charities in the world, Operation Blessing International has touched the lives of millions of people in over 90 countries and in every state, providing disaster relief, medical aid, clean water, and community development, all with the love of Jesus Christ. And with God's help, we are looking ahead to do even more, because the best is yet to come.
I love the way Operation Blessing is fast on the scene when there has been a disaster, always looking for ways that they can inject hope and very practical help into the midst of people's need. Lots going on here at home, and you know, we've had so much disaster in our country in the last year or two, and they are first on the spot and last to leave. You know, all of that happens because people like you say, we want to be a part of that. We want to make a difference. And so we're asking you right now to do that. Will you support the work of Operation Blessing with a special gift today? Our number is toll-free. It's 1-800-700-7000. You can bless people all around the world as well as right here at home. So be generous, won't you? It makes such a difference when we all link arms together and we say, I want to be a part of seeing that help come right into the midst of the need of other people. So call now, 1-800-700-7000.
Well, we leave you today with a word from Lamentations, and this was a prophecy from Jeremiah. He foretold a lot of weeping, a lot of trouble for Israel, but here's the promise. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning.